Timeline.
Play the timeline.
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 Timeline. The timeline.
This warrants a discussion. Let's start with the initial claim, the Xana DoorDash claim. So Xana received her order of DoorDash at 3:59 a.m. Now keep in mind that this would also mean that at that same time frame, we would have the DoorDash driver driving around the area. Same exact time that Brian is supposedly entering the area and the house, right? Which therefore should be reflected in the 11/12 King Road surveillance video, right? We should have two cars entering pretty much one right after the other, right? Two different cars, one right after the other. We don't have that. And we should also have the sound of the DoorDash driver getting out of her car, shutting the car door, and then also of someone opening the front door and retrieving that DoorDash order. At least maybe the door closing. Okay, we would hear something that related to that actual transaction. Now they're saying that Xana got it at 3:59 and that 4 a.m. is when all this stuff, freaking crap started happening, right? But yet Xana's bag is in the kitchen, empty. So she has time to eat her food while all the attacks are going on. And she doesn't hear anything or, no, dude, no. No effing way. So the murders are going on, as fireworks are going off, as Kaylee's running up and down the stairs and Xana's in the kitchen eating? No. No. I used to think that the DoorDash was completely fake until they showed us the video where the DoorDash driver uses her flashlight so that she can actually see the address of 1122, right? Now bear with me because I'm going to try to be unbiased here. But this footage looks a little sketchy to me. If you notice, the person's not even looking in the direction of the house when they find the address. They're looking away from the house. Their flashlight's not really used as if it's looking at the addresses on the curb or anything like that. So it just does not look like that's what is really happening right there. Plus it kind of looks like a guy. She could have her hair pulled back, whatever. Now, she could have been looking at her map, although we don't see the light in her face, which, whatever. She could be looking at her map and then realize, okay, I'm right here. This says it's right here. Oh, it's right behind me. You know what I mean? But I don't know how I feel about this. Though it does help support the theory that someone ordered DoorDash at 3:59, which they use as a sign of life for Xana at 4 a.m., right? They also use her activity of 4:12 a.m. on TikTok as signs of life, right? I'm sorry, but that proves nothing about Xana. Anyone could place that order and anyone could be on her phone using TikTok, okay? Anyone. Not only that, where were any of the victims' phones found? Where was Kaylee's phone found? Where was Maddie's phone found? Where was Ethan's phone? Where was Xana's phones? Where were the phones found? And to boot, they had no record of Xana ordering DoorDash. They had a record of Ethan, but not Xana. So no, Xana did not order that DoorDash. Let's break this down for a minute, though, to see how unlikely it is. So, if MKXE was true, then that means while Xana is awake and on TikTok, that Brian silently stabs Maddie and then chases Kaylee before stabbing her over 20 times and completely disfiguring her facial structure, which would take a considerable amount of time and energy, without Xana being alerted enough to scream for help or help them or call 911 herself. Not only that, but he did all that I just said, beat somebody's face in to where it was unrecognizable and stabbed them over 20 times, combined over 25 times, and not leave a single freaking bloody shoe print upstairs? Okay, sure, whatever. Now, not only that, but he's so stealthy enough that he doesn't, alert Xana, who's awake. But he apparently has the stamina of a freaking Clydesdale, because then he goes downstairs and stabs Xana over 50 times while she's putting up a huge fight, right? The fight of her life. On the floor in her room that Ethan is asleep on the bed in. And he doesn't wake up this entire time while she's fighting for her life. And just because he wasn't exhausted enough, he for no reason stabs and carves up a sleeping Ethan just for fun, but yet he leaves the roommate who saw him alive? No, okay? If Xana would have been struggling for her life, like they say she was because she did put up a fight, we would hear that on the 1112 King Road surveillance video at 4 o'clock or whatever, and we don't hear that. And if she fought for her life, wouldn't she have DNA under her fingernails? If Xana was attacked where she was found, on the floor, then she would have been in a giant puddle of blood. There would have been a giant puddle or pool of blood on the floor. We don't see that. If Ethan was asleep when he was attacked, then why leave Dylan awake and alive? Okay? Ethan's injuries, the wound to his neck that underneath his clavicle that severed his jugular vein. I don't know about that, a lot of people may not know this, but when you slit something's throat and put him to where they're kind of upside down, he wasn't upside down, but his head was hanging off the bed, you're going to drain that entire body of blood. Again, there would have been massive amounts of blood on that mattress and on that floor. There wasn't. Yes, there's blood seeping out of the house. And yes, there was blood on the mattress. Nowhere near enough. That would come from being attacked in the same exact spot that you lay for 8 hours to bleed out. Not only that, but their little story makes it out to be where Ethan is almost collateral damage, right? If he's asleep, then he put up no threat to Brian, so why was he killed? Collateral damage. If any of them were collateral damage, then Dylan and Bethany would also be dead. He wouldn't leave two alive, especially one that saw him, if he was taking collateral damage. He would have made sure there was none, right? No. I used to think at a time that Kaylee and Maddie were collateral damage, but based off of Kaylee's injuries, no, there's no way that that's collateral damage. There's some sort of animosity towards Kaylee with her having her facial structure disfigured like that. I personally also don't think that there is enough or a big enough blood splatter on the wall behind Kaylee for her to get her face bashed in like that. There would have been a lot of splatter on the wall and on the person that is doing it, okay? I'm sorry, but Kaylee's injuries alone would have exhausted one person. Kaylee's alone would have exhausted somebody. Xana's alone would have exhausted somebody. That to me shows at least 2 freaking people. But that's assuming that they were killed at the same time, which they weren't, okay? Xana and Ethan were killed hours before Kaylee and Maddie were. I'm still struggling with if I believe that the same people killed both parties, okay? I kind of do because of what I'm trying to dissect out of the 1112 audio, which I'm doing now. I got some really good shit on that one too. You guys are going to love that. I
I still struggle. Like, I'm almost positive I know what happened, or at least around when it happened with Ethan and Xana based off of the last video that I put out. But I'm still really struggling with exactly when I think Kaylee and Maddie were unalive. Anyway, I'm trying to stay on track here. So, 7 minutes after Xana's supposed TikTok activity is when they say that Dylan and Bethany started texting each other, right? 7 minutes. The texts that they give us show that they're leaving a big part of the beginning of this conversation out, because nobody starts a conversation like that. And then why would Bethany say that Xana was wearing all black? Like, there was obviously a little bit of a conversation, maybe a big conversation, before the text that they show us, okay? But they say from 4:19 to 4:37 that Dylan and Bethany are texting each other, okay? And that they're trying to call the roommates and all that other good crap, right? You would not have just heard Kaylee say there's someone here and then crying if everything that I just told you about MKXE were true and actually happened. That Xana would have been, if she put up the fight of her life on the floor in her bedroom, Dylan would have heard that and would have known for sure to call 911. Okay? I do think that Dylan heard a lot that morning. I think something happens at 3:30, okay? But then there's something that happens at like 1:45 to 2:30, and so I'm still really trying to dissect that. I'm coming on that the surviving roommates were taunted and threatened, and that's why they are cooperating. If you notice, both of them at different times say blah 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 blah, and that's all I know. When somebody says that's all I know repeatedly like that, and make sure to stop their sentences with that, it seems like an agreed upon story that is where they're going to limit what they say. Now, this does not necessarily mean agreed upon by Bethany and Dylan. They could have been forced to this agreement and stuff, you know what I mean? But Bethany alone gives it away that she knows way more than she's letting on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, victim blaming and stuff. I'm just pointing out facts and truth and observations. So, and then also, what is up with Dylan's text, "I'm so screwed"? To which Bethany replies, "I know," or "Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone." What are you screwed about, Dylan? What are you screwed about? That you're breaking the promise of staying in your room like you were told to do? That if you were to traipse out of your room, that you would then incriminate yourself because of what was set up and staged at the house? What are you screwed over? Lots and lots of questions I have that I think should have been asked by law enforcement, authorities, whatever, that were not asked. And one of them would be, what are you screwed about? Why are you screwed? And what do you know, Bethany, about her being screwed? What are you guys talking about? Now, as if you couldn't tell, I'm trying to stick to the, right before and during the 4 o'clock hour. This video is going to be only 4 o'clock hour, okay? So, why do they make it MKXE? Well, Xana's the only one with severe defensive wounds, right? They have to put her last, second to last, because if she would have been first, then there's no freaking way that any of the roommates, including Kaylee and Maddie, wouldn't have heard and wouldn't have stopped it, called for help, called 911, something. Xana, if they would have put her first, would have been proof that no, something would have been done, something would have been stopped, okay? They put her second to last because they have to make it to where she was putting up a fight that nobody else heard, right? Also, this is why I think the false DoorDash claim was made, and why Dylan was being convinced that she heard Xana and not Kaylee, because, it just doesn't make sense. They're doing it to cover up the fact that Dylan really did hear Kaylee and not Xana that morning. And they're doing it to try to pretend that nobody heard Xana fighting for her life because she was second to last, including her boyfriend who's in the same freaking room. It's ridiculous, okay? Ridiculous. I'm going to really try to keep this under 20 minutes. Okay, next thing. The DoorDash driver on the camera that I showed you. Where's the bag? Okay? Where's the bag that is supposed to have her food in the DoorDash driver's hands. There's nothing in that DoorDash driver's hands. I don't think that's a female. I think that's a male, and I think that's David Baracoa. Okay, he said himself that he walked by the house at 4 o'clock. Nobody walks by the house except for that person. That person also does not look like they're looking at addresses. It looks like they're signaling something. And don't get me started on the house that's across fucking view of the 1112 King Road. There's people looking out the windows. There's people opening the door. There's people moving the curtains. Those people were definitely aware that some crazy ass shit was going down, okay? I do not believe the DoorDash driver, but there are some things I want to point out about the DoorDash driver and her story, okay? Her original story was that when she was trying to find which house was 1122, that she could see into 1122, and that there was a long-haired brunette girl that every time she looked at her, she would duck down underneath the bathroom window. People were like, oh, Xana had dark hair. Xana would not order DoorDash and then hide from the freaking delivery person, okay? That was not Xana. Xana didn't order the DoorDash. That person may have ordered the DoorDash, but that person is not Xana, okay? That's probably one of the girls, one of the other sorority girls that helped the boys that did this, okay? The other thing is, she originally said nothing about a white Elantra and nothing about Brian. She said she saw a tan sedan driven by a pale male with either blonde or red spiky hair with the dome light on, who did not look at her when he drove past her, okay? Nothing about a white Elantra, nothing about Brian. I believe the DoorDash and the false order of MKXE is just to mask and cover up the fact that Xana was attacked at 1:15, and she was attacked first. They're trying to hide that because then it covers up the fraternity brothers being responsible, okay? And it covers up the fact that there were many witnesses to Xana and Ethan's attack, okay? Do I think Ethan and Xana died right then at 1:15? I kind of don't. And I do kind of have a couple problems because there's people that are saying, oh, I saw them at 2 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they did. Maybe they saw them after they got beat up. I don't think so. You heard what I heard in that last video, okay? Until that can be fully explained, no, nobody saw them at 2 o'clock, and if they did, they were severely beaten up and or dying. That's all I have for the 4 o'clock hour. I hope this wasn't too much and I didn't, yell at you guys. I know you guys didn't like the voice effect of last one, so I hope you guys don't mind my voice. I know it's all over the place. But I also want to thank you guys, really, for the reception that my last and my first video got, because I worked on that for months and damn near ruined the speaker on my phone to get that, and annoyed my roommate very much so. My roommate thought that I was like a sicko for listening to that over and over again, and the reception of that is beautiful, and it makes me know that people are not as blind as they try to make us out to be, okay? So thank you all so much for the engagement you guys are giving that last video. I hope this one doesn't disappoint you, and there's definitely way more to come, so I don't know, like, subscribe, and share. Thanks, you guys. Bye.